it myself. Oh God.
Everything okay?
Oh yeah, the kids just wanted to go motorcycle riding, and one of them wasn't working, and so we had to get the new spark plug. Got it.
Fun. Well, how are you in your neck of the woods?
It's hot out today.
Yeah, it is. When I checked around 1 o'clock, it said it was 90 degrees, but it felt like 100.
I don't know what
It's funny how that happens in the summer here.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, really weird.
I mean, it's July. You'd think it'd be balmy out.
Well, it's supposed to be hotter than normal too.
Mm-hmm.
The spider ran up my leg.
Oh. It's been a long day.
I understand. No, I completely understand.
At least you don't have screaming dogs like poor Nikita.
Becky, I haven't had a chance to tell you this. We ended up getting a rescue corgi.
Did you really?
Yeah, and like right at the beginning of the pandemic stuff. So it was March. He's 7. Apparently he was a breeding dog, and then they snipped him several months ago, and he has been fantastic.
Yeah, we lost ours this last fall.
Oh no.
Yeah, she had cancer, and we held on for probably longer than we should have. And one day it was just like, nope, time to go. So it was sad. We've still got 2 others, so it's not like we're bereft, but we missed her.
Right.
She was a good girl.
Oh.
Yeah.
We lost a good girl to cancer last year, and it's just
I remember you telling me that. I think that had happened not long before Summer Summit last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. But no, Fry has been the other challenge with Fry. We joke about it. We had to send him to boarding school because we sent him to a trainer for about 4 days. Just to get him to walk on a leash because he wasn't housebroken.
Sure. Always out in the kennel and yeah.
But the trainer got him squared away, so he walks on a leash great. But the problem is he wants to mark everything.
Yeah.
So fortunately, since he's a boy dog, we use these belly bands on him.
Oh yeah, so, I've seen those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and he's housebroken otherwise. He doesn't poop in the house or anything. I mean,
that's good.
Yeah. So
my boy dog that we have, he's half corgi and half beagle. He's Lucy's love child. She was pregnant when we adopted her, so we have 2 of the babies that resulted, and we call them babies. They're 11 years old now, but he is so incorrigible at the vet. At home, he's like the biggest baby, lap dog, lay on you, lick you, love you. He gets to the vet and he goes feral. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. And like none of the people at the vet, when I call, like the other dog, Vinny, she had this her whole tummy was a hot spot a few weeks ago. So I called and I said, my dog Vinny's got this horrible hot spot thing going on her tummy. Can you see her? And they're like, not Silas. No, not Silas. They're like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, if Silas ever needs medical attention, it's going to just be like, please, I'll pay extra. just take it. But she ended up she had a yeast infection that was like her whole tummy. So we had to bathe her every other day. And that's the stuff, you put the shampoo on her and it has to stay on there for 10 minutes before you rinse it off. So every other day I would put on my bathing suit and get in the shower and soap the dog up and sit down with her and wait 10 minutes and then rinse her off.
This sounds, Jezebel, do not start.
The things we do, right?
I know.
I have to vacuum when we get done because the dog has chewed up a wood stick.
Oh.
Apparently got Kleenexes from somewhere.
Oh, my one loves Kleenexes. Yeah, we have to be really careful not to miss when we hit. Oh, look at that pretty boy.
Girl.
Oh, that's the girl?
Yeah.
Well, even prettier. What's your name?
Jezebel.
Jezebel.
I am a furry tyrant.
Is your hair everywhere, Jezebel?
Yeah, it is everywhere.
That's the one thing I do not miss about Lucy is brushing that coat out.
Oh my God. Well, it's not just brushing the coat out, but I swear to God, whenever we vacuum, they've been hiding dogs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
When we moved in here, we bought a Dyson, and I had always heard, stuff about Dyson vacuum cleaners, and it's like, oh yeah, they're great, and I never understood
Until you started to vacuum the dog hair with a Dyson.
it's like, oh my God, this thing's amazing.
Yeah. But it makes you feel bad about yourself every time you use it because of the amount of dirt it picks up. And you're like, I didn't think we were that dirty, but apparently we are.
I apparently I don't have that sense of shame. I'm kind of like, for me, it's kind of like, wow, there was a lot of dirt in there. Glad we vacuumed. Okay, furry tyrant, you are about 2 seconds away from being put in dog jail.
No.
Yes. Of course, dog jail just means that she's locked up in the kitchen with bees.
Yeah.
But actually, I think this is going to be the safest thing for you. I know. You're not happy about it. I'm not happy about it.
oh my God, I'm running on empty.
Yeah.
Why today? Bad day.
What is this? Teaching in interactive mathematics.
I forgot to tell Brooke, congratulations on her award.
Saved. Oh, yeah.
Who, what now?
Brooke, Estes got with a co-aid, the co-aid scholarship.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. She's the one you switched out sessions for, so thank you again for that.
I can make stuff with very few exceptions. I can make stuff move around.
What's that?
Holy mother of goodness.
So Becky, is that a home office that you have or?
No. This is my office. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's nice. It's not as
Yeah,
nice
it
as my
is.
old office is. My old office was better.
But it
Mostly-
complained about the heat.
Mostly because it wasn't hot in there. It was nice and cold in there. I never mind having to put on a sweater, but yeah, the heat in this one is not good.
So I find this intriguing that usually the waiting room sits around 25 to 30 people. By the time we're done and I count everybody and all the people are sharing a deal, it's hitting right around 60 in each section. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that is.
So I'm going to admit them. Do you want hosting for any reason, Thomas?
Me? No. I mean, the only thing that I need to do, honestly, is just sharing my screen.
Okay. And you should be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so as long as we're set for that, we're good.
You should be able to share your screen.
Good deal.
Okay.
Technically, everybody should be able to share their screen if they really wanted to.
In theory, but you can override them.
Oh, wow. I feel special.
I hate to let that power go to my head, though, right?
Exactly. Oh, I'll kick somebody out without a second thought if I have to.
Boy.
Wow. Talk about power going to somebody's head.
I know, right? Just give me a little bit.
Becky,
Yes.
just so you know that Jim S. is Susan Coughlin-Schmidt. I'm using his computer.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You could let Jim sit in too. It'd be all right.
The more the merrier.
Actually, Kim's the one who needs to know that so she can put you in for drawings.
I got it.
Okay.
I feel special when you say they're my drawings. If they were mine, I would have won.
I'm counting on that annual meeting one tonight.
You're holding out for that one.
Yep. Should be a good one. And I will be present to win.
I could just confess to the whole world, I did a giant faux pas today, and I realized that I scheduled Praxis testing and Pearson VUE testing in the same lab at the same time on the same day. Not possible to do. So I'm going to have a really long testing day next week.
Oh,
But the good thing is, a lot of people are testing. All my slots for
Yeah.
both testing groups is full, so I even expanded them.
that's great.
I know, and a lot of them were GED, so I'm super excited.
Pikachu unicorn, yeah, more or less. I fully admit. So, you know, I like to tangent. I'm even going to tangent before we get started with everything. What I have behind me on the wall is this. I call it vinyl, for lack of a better word. I know that's not really what it is, but it's a long strip of essentially vinyl blackboard that you can stick up on a wall. It's got adhesive on the back. It only costs about 20 or 30 bucks a strip, one of those big strips, and you can use liquid chalk on it. So this is something that my 11-year-old daughter and my partner, you know, the both of them will go through and draw stuff and whatnot. I have no artistic ability. I take no credit for it. I am happy to give that where it goes though. So, all right. That being said, Kim, are we ready to get rolling with this?
We are.
Okay.
So Thomas Ross from GEDTS. I've seen everybody
Wow,
all day.
okay.
Tell them about you.
It's been a long day, just take it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, my name's Thomas Ross. I am a state relationship manager with GED Testing Service. I have been with GED now for 6 years. So yeah, and I've been with South Dakota for I think 5 of those 6.
Yeah.
I'm based in Iowa City, Iowa. I've been wow, it's been good 20 years in the educational management business. So between here and Pearson, you know, I've had a number of hats over the years. But one of the things that we're here to talk about today is something that I think we could have, and when I say we, it's like a royal we, right? Like I think all of us probably could have done a better job planning for distance learning. And it's one of those things now that it's been really thrust upon us. I think we're having to address different ways of going about it. So what we're going to do today, and I'll give me a second here. Hey, the host is disabled participant screen sharing.
You got it now?
Aha, perfect.
Good. Sorry.
No, no problem whatsoever. Let me get back up here. Maybe over here. How about this? Distance learning with GED testing service. So what we're going to do today, the first thing that we're going to talk about, even before we go into the distance learning piece of this, is really talking about the instructional needs of different generations. Okay? And from there, we're going to talk about some different philosophies, and especially some different apps and some programs that, you know, we've found really encourage students in active learning. By the way, what I'm also going to tell you, clearly what we're going to talk about today is not the definitive list. There is no definitive list. A lot of it is really figuring out what works for you, what tools you have, you know, what's going to work out the best. Okay, so I look at what we're talking about today as a good starting point. It can be a good ending point too for you, right? I mean, if you go through and you're like, hey, I like this, fantastic, okay? And if you're working with something else and go, well, I like what I have and it's been working just great, that's fine too, okay? So we'll talk about all of that stuff. And then finally, we'll also explore some resources for teachers for you all to organize your classes and instructional activities. So, what does generation have to do with learning? So when you take a look at your students, we're using 5 different generations here, right? The numbers here honestly don't shift that much from state to state. I mean, you know, clearly with some of your programs, you're going to see a slight shift in there. But, you know, we're looking at a little over 2/3 of our population being between the ages of 19 and 44. I mean, when we're talking about age, that's really what we're looking at. So a lot of our learning is going to be geared towards millennials or towards zennials, Generation X and millennials, right? That being said, we also get a number of boomers who come in, okay? We have a number of older Generation X folks. So we need to be cognizant really of all of this. I mean, especially when we start thinking about the one-room classrooms that we have, right? Because especially in a place like South Dakota, or in a place that, you know, doesn't maybe have as large of a population base to work with, you're pretty much getting everybody, okay? And you don't have enough people typically to be able to go and sort folks out. As a reminder here, Zennials are considered a swing section or in-betweeners. They don't really consider themselves true millennials, elder millennials as you will, and they don't consider themselves Gen Xers, so something else to keep in mind. NRS 2017, adult ed participants, close to 1.5 million, okay? And about half of those folks are between 24 and 44. Again, when you expand that out to 19, you get, you know, you're getting 68%. You're getting a little over 2/3, right? When we're taking a look at this now, traditionalists, those are going to be your significantly older folks, right? I'm guessing you don't see a lot of them, but you will see some. The majority of folks that you're going to see are going to be between the Gen Z and the boomers, right? And as you can tell by, you know, looking at the preferences there, there are some significant differences, you know, and it's kind of interesting to me the whole thing with self-reliance is something that tends to be held by Gen X and Gen Z, you know, whereas millennials, you know, millennials are you know, a little bit different breakout. So anyway, and by the way, I mentioned this yesterday. I will mention it again today. I'm going to leave this up. I'm going to leave stuff like this up for a little while. If there's something that, you know, you're wanting to catch later or something like that, please just keep in mind that I will be sending these PowerPoint slide decks out to Kim and Becky. They're going to be able to share them with you. So if there's something that you aren't able to get, you know, copied right away, perfectly okay. You'll get a copy of this later. The other thing, and I didn't mention it today, at least I hadn't mentioned it yet, but I will mention it now. If you have questions as we're going through, please just go ahead and put them in chat. You know, we'll stop periodically. We'll, you know, go ahead and answer those questions, and we'll address things as they come up. I know with my attention, the amount of attention I can pay or lack thereof, I forget things, and we have a great way to catch all that. So please just put the question out there as it comes out. And these are some age group and generational characteristics And I think from your work with students in the classroom, there isn't going to be anything that's going to be too surprising, right? So with communication, you know, boomers prefer in-person and group discussions. You know, with what is considered Gen Y, again, the interesting thing that I found out is the similarities between boomers and Gen Y or Zennials, or however you want to look at it. You know, they're pretty similar, whereas Gen X and Gen Z are also have a number of similarities. Just something to note. Nothing really. It's something to note mainly because I know we look at this and we think, oh, you know, there are these 5 different ways of going about it, but really it's more to atavism. Atavism. John, I'm going to have to take that one offline. I'm not sure. But I will certainly look into that. Gen Z. So Gen Z, you know, demonstrates more current online behaviors, okay? I have to admit, you know, for those of you who aren't aware, I was in the Iowa Army National Guard for about 26 years. I retired a little over 3 years ago. One of the things that I miss, because I don't have these kinds of interactions anymore. You know, we had a lot of kids in our unit, right? We had a lot of people who were 25 and younger, and that was honestly how I kind of kept up on what was going on in younger generations, right? I'd see them once a month, and, you know, listen in on conversations without trying to be, you know, creepy and weird. But just, you know, just to kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And one of the things that blew me away, I think starting about 10, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, was how much YouTube is used by folks when they're doing homework. Just in even the K-12 and college classrooms. When people have questions, if they aren't sure about something, first searches, they go to YouTube. What I'm guessing is that you're seeing a lot of this in your adult ed classrooms as well, right? People, when they have questions, you know, if they're working on something at home, if they're actually, you know, doing the homework assignments and all of that, especially the younger that you're looking at, the more attuned they are to going to something like, you know, like YouTube. Excuse me. Also, you know, Gen Z is more likely to prefer YouTube or apps to millennials who prefer printed books. So you can see that there. The reason that I wanted to cover all of this before going into, you know, distance learning, putting things to use in the classroom, the virtual classroom that is, it's just a reminder that our students are different. And especially in a case like cases like a lot of what we deal with in adult education, we're dealing with a one-room classroom that is not just people of varying skill levels, but it's also people of varying ages. It's easier to see when you actually have everybody in the room, right? I've got everybody in the room, I can see, you know, it's visual, it's there, okay? But if I'm doing Zoom calls, I mean, I can see everybody on screen. If I'm doing calls like this, I can see everyone on screen more than likely, but it may not register quite the same way. Or depending on how you're doing it, you know, maybe they don't have strong enough internet access for them to be able to do video. So you're just seeing a lot of names on screen. Maybe you're just working a lot more with people one-on-one. And the point that I'm getting at here is that I think it can be easy to lose sight of the fact that, you know, you still have to tailor and tweak a little bit depending on who you're working with. And really going through this is more a reminder of anything else before we kind of hit the meat of the presentation, okay? putting smartphones to use in the classroom. So, as I'm sure many of you are well aware, our students don't necessarily have a desktop at home. They don't necessarily have a laptop at home, but most of them either have a tablet or a phone. Okay? A lot of folks have a phone, and that's what they use. That can be problematic, but we're going to take a look at some ways that we can go ahead and address this and actually put those smartphones to use in the classroom, right? It's more important than ever, especially where a lot of us are doing virtual classes. I'm going to break off on a tangent here for a second. Is there anyone who is back to doing in-person classes? DOC is, yes. Really? More one-on-one? Okay. All of this is not surprising. Kim, Becky, what are you guys seeing where you are?
We're just doing one-on-one appointments, more prepping them for online at this point.
Okay.
I don't know how financially we're going to afford to go back and keep everything clean enough.
Understood. And here's the thing. So we're, a lot of, it looks like outside of corrections, for the most part, people are either doing one-on-one or they're doing virtual learning. Based on what we've been seeing, my gut feeling on this, and if you all disagree with me, please let me know, but it seems to me this is the new normal for the foreseeable future, at least through the end of the calendar year, right?
Yes.
In being able to do that, I know that there's been a lot of adjustments for folks since March, right? Going through, trying to figure out how to adjust everything, how to make things work in the current climate. That's why using phones in the classroom, in the virtual classroom, so to speak, is really important, because that's the tool that your students have. It's what they're used to. And it's something that, they're going to be familiar with using. As you can see here, more than just texting. Oh, Grandpa. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about, yeah, I want to see what K-12 ends up doing too, because that's, yeah. Anyway, Mentimeter. This is a good, it's a good program, it's a good app, I should say, to use, especially if you are doing virtual classrooms, okay? The strength with Mentimeter is the interactivity that it has. So when we take a look at that, this is something that you could have, for example, you can put polls on there. You can ask questions. If you've got a group of 10 people online at the same time, for those of you that this is relevant for, you can do stuff like this, right? You can create fun and interactive presentations, okay? It's fairly easy to use. The thing with Mentimeter, and it's gonna be the same with a lot of this stuff, I'm gonna be showing you a fair amount, okay? I'm gonna show you some slides. I'm gonna talk about this stuff. But realistically, a lot of this, if it sounds interesting to you, I would say take 10 minutes with each of these apps and play around with it. I know when I went to Mentimeter, for example, all you have to do, you sign up for a free account and you go from there, okay? But the ways that you can use Mentimeter, it's great for opening a class, right? You can ask question of the day. You can have that, and you can have it out beforehand, right? So it's good for that. You can assess students' understanding of a concept. It's one of those things, I know a lot of times in a classroom, one of the things that we'll do is we'll go through and we'll put a question up, and we'll ask what the answer is. And maybe it ends up being a multiple choice question. Maybe it just ends up being, you know, fill in the blank or something like that. But one of the things that it does is it gives you an opportunity to really assess what your students know without them trying to crowdsource an answer by looking at everybody else's raised hand, okay? And it, you know, prevents embarrassment for people when they don't get it right. And again, the caveat, of course, people shouldn't be embarrassed when they get it right. It's the whole question of, you know, losing face in front of others, et cetera, et cetera. So that is what I mean there. Anyway, word of the day. Again, have students give a first impression of what it means. Posting a cartoon and asking students to make inferences. Oh, inferences. Again, this is one of those things that I'm going to take another tangent here. Please bear with me. Especially if we talked, you know, where we talked about this yesterday. But I always feel the need to talk about this because I think when it comes to inference, we make it too challenging. Okay, we do. All inference is taking, you're looking at a situation, okay? You combine what you know with what you see, and then you come up with a new idea from that. That's it. That's all you're doing. That is inference. And I struggle with this now because I fell into the same trap, and I'm going to call it a trap. There we go. I'm going to commit to it. I fell into the same trap a lot of us do, where we talk about we're going to teach inference. We aren't teaching inference. Inference is something that every one of your students does every day without thinking about it, okay? Let me give you an example. If I am having a text conversation with my partner, and then after, you know, some back and forth, if all I get back is a single K,
Okay.
I can infer from that she's probably not too happy, okay? It's an inference, okay? Because what I'm doing is I'm taking my knowledge based on past experience, I'm looking at what I actually have there, and I'm putting it together to come up with a new piece of information. Here's the thing, your students do that every day. They do it every day. Whether they're watching their kids, they're watching their partner, you know, they're interacting with somebody. You're not teaching them inference. You're helping them connect to what they already do, okay? Can you call it teaching? Sure. But to me, teaching implies that you're trying to give them this new skill, and they already have it. They already have the skill. What you're trying to do is get them to apply it and also expand their knowledge base, right? So when we post a cartoon, I mean, especially for folks with little background either in history or current events, or for folks who have English as a second language, their inference isn't going to be the same because their experiences aren't the same. And that makes sense. So when we're talking about making inferences, your students, you know, they're going through, and for the most part, because this is what I've seen with folks that I've worked with and that I tutor, I mean, they make an inference that just may not necessarily be the right one, but that's because they don't understand some of the cultural clues in there, okay? They're making inferences, but what we're helping them do is fine tune it, okay? All right, tangent over. So with Mentimeter, yes, you could post a cartoon and then ask students to make inferences. You can also ask students what they know about a given topic and just post their remarks. But like I said, the biggest thing with Mentimeter and the biggest use for it is really if you're having a group of people in a virtual classroom all at the same time, because it's a good tool for sharing, right? Everybody sees it at the same time, and you go from there, all right? I'll get into Edmodo here in a second, but that was the reason I wanted to show Mentimeter. Now again, to go back to one of the themes of this presentation, Mentimeter may not work for you, right? You know, what Steph said, for example, they have some small one-on-one appointment time. They're trying to use a hybrid model, so they're using online platforms plus the appointments. you know, clearly, I shouldn't say clearly, to me, I'll back that up. To me, Mentimeter really wouldn't be that useful for one-on-one for the most part. It wouldn't. It's not worth it, okay? If largely what you're doing is one-on-one, then probably isn't going to work for you, okay? Are doing, you know, online classrooms, if you are having people meet at a certain time, it has a ton of potential, mainly because of the interactivity of it. It keeps people engaged. Okay. All right, moving forward. And actually, let me back up for a minute, because I forgot to do this, and I again, habits that we have when we're dealing with a room full of people in front of you versus virtually. Is there anybody who is on the line who uses Mentimeter currently? I'm not seeing any yeses, and I'm not surprised. It's one of those tools that when I've talked to folks in other states, I haven't seen it used a whole lot. Oh, crickets. Yeah. So it's one of those things I would highly suggest that you use it. One of the big things with it, again, it can be used from a phone. So your students will be able to get to it. It's available on the Google Play Store. It's available on the Apple Store. So anyway. So now we're going to talk about Edmodo, Lynn. So I see where what I was doing was a little confusing, but yes, Edmodo. So let's, so Lynn, clearly you're using Edmodo. Is there anyone else in here who's using Edmodo? Because this is one that I have seen used a fair amount nationwide. Excellent. This is the closest way that I have to really test and see if anybody is awake and paying attention. I can't virtually throw GED foam balls at people from here. Doesn't work. I've tried it. It really just annoys my dog more than anything else. So if there are folks who use Edmodo, it would, right? I'm going to say this again. It has potential for interactivity, but one of the bigger things here is that it's really helpful for having, for more of a classroom type feel, right? Don't worry about the class code on there at the moment. But what I will say here, you know, Edmodo is really good, partially because it has a fairly wide adoption, which is helpful. The bigger thing to me is that you can do it on a PC, you can do it on a phone, you can do it on a tablet. And it's, yes, Lynn, hey, actually, Lynn, you seem to have a lot of experience with this. Would you mind unmuting your line and talking about your experience a little bit with Edmodo?
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon. Yeah, I like using Edmodo. It's been, at first I thought it would be kind of difficult, but once I got used to using it, I find it's actually pretty easy to load everything, as well as managing your workload. It doesn't have a lot of tabs that you have to go in and out of, like Google Classroom.
Yeah.
You kind of stay on the same thing, and I like some of the features that it has for their quizzes. I think it's less complicated, and I do have an account for myself, so I can see what things look like on the telephone. And I've done both Google Classroom and Edmodo comes out clear, where, you know, and comes up easily. You can find any work that you're looking for, you know, where Google Classroom, The quizzes and stuff don't always display properly.
Sure. Are you sure? I mean, did they prep you for this? Like, did you reach out to Edmodo and know somehow I had? No, I'm kidding, obviously.
No, I
but
was asked to do it. That's what they wanted us at work to use is Edmodo. And because there was so many other programs out there, I decided to really look at all of them to see what
Sure.
they all offer and if they're easy to work with,
No, and this actually reminds me of something else that I wanted to get back to as well. One of the things that I talk about in professional development sessions is like particularly is that our students will be comfortable with something if we're comfortable with it, right? And one of the things that I also want to make clear as we're talking about this, with the things that Lynn's talking about, a lot of what I heard, and I don't view this as an issue, but if anyway, let me know if you find this problematic. But for Lynn, Edmodo was really easy to use. It was something fairly intuitive for her, and something at the end of the day she felt comfortable with. And as you're going through this, I would say that's something else to kind of keep in mind too, right? Because we're looking at some tools. They're great tools, depending on how you use them, depending on how you want to use them. But the other thing is your comfortability with it, okay? So the things that Lynn talked about, fairly common why people stick with Edmodo, okay? It's fairly stripped down, doesn't have necessarily all the bells and whistles that a Google Classroom does, which means it's easier to keep sorted, it's easier to keep track of things, it's easier to explain to your students. And yet it still has the flexibility of being available on several different platforms. Okay. Is everybody gonna feel that way about Edmodo? Of course not. But it's one of those things that when you find something that you are comfortable with, definitely try having your students work with that. That's your starting point. Now, I say that because as with Steph, she was saying that she stuck with students that things that her students had seen, right? But you hadn't prepared anyone for seeing a new thing, and that's fine too. Okay. Everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. So, Lynn, I appreciate you sharing your experiences with it. I think you all are better able to, I won't say advocate, but I will say really describe your experience with it. So yeah, that would be Edmodo. This is what, again, if you've used Google Classroom in the past, it's not that much different. It's just kind of to me, it's kind of a stripped down version. Can we get more info on tracking and grading? I don't think we're going to here. However, we're not going to here. This is one of those things where, again, I would encourage you to go back and play around with it a little bit. But I haven't really been asked about this before. So I'm going to make a note here. I'm doing more tracking and grading with Edmodo because I can't really speak to it. I don't, honestly, from what I know, I don't think either Susan or Debbie have gone much into that either, but I will double check with them. But the biggest thing, again, heading out there, playing around with it. And it's also something that you can experiment with a couple of your students with, right? Because something like an Edmodo really is more utilitarian, okay? And what I mean by that is that you can use it one-on-one, you can do quizzes, you can do polls, you can do assignments there. So you can have people in a virtual class that aren't necessarily meeting all at the same time. When we look at distance learning, there are a few different purposes that I think we need to keep in mind, because you know, everything that we're going to talk about has different strengths, different weaknesses, but also has different purposes, right? So when we look at something like Mentimeter, that's really geared more towards participation, okay? Having people available at the same time, right? When we look at something like an Edmodo or a Google Classroom, we're looking at something that is more based on being able to have a classroom structure, okay? So you're able to give assignments, you're able to give quizzes, you know, you're able to hand out folks the logistical, it helps you manage the logistical part of what you have in the classroom. What we're going to talk about here with AAA No is a fantastic tool that gets to the skill and drill part of it. You know, and I know when we talk about teaching, I know when we talk about the GED, we say, you know, skill and drill isn't the only thing that you know, not to focus on it too much, but by the same token, especially when it comes to math, you still have to practice it. You still have to get that fluency. For those of you who were on the call yesterday, I apologize, but you're going to hear the same story because I like it. My daughter, who turned 11 today, when she decided to do musical instruments for 5th grade this year, she decided that she was going to do both flute and viola. Most people in her class did one or the other. Or they did something that they could switch from one to the other. Not my daughter. No. She has been around. You know, she comes by it honestly. She has to do things the most difficult way that she can. What I'm getting at here is that she would get frustrated because it also meant that she had twice the practice time. Okay. And we would go through things, you know, being a musician as well. I mean, she would bring things home. We would talk about conceptual, you know, things with counting and time signatures and you know, notes and things like that. But at the end of the day, we could talk about all the conceptual stuff we wanted. She still had to practice and get the notes under her fingers. Okay? And that's really similar to what we're talking about here when it comes to math. And obviously, you know, other things like reading as well. Without the fluency, the conceptual part, I won't say doesn't matter, but it's not as helpful, okay? So I've done this big setup here for AAA No, but in terms of math, I think especially for our ESL groups, this is one of the best tools that you're gonna find out there, okay? Thousands of interactive arithmetic lessons, no cost, no registration, unlimited practice, okay? Immediate feedback, which is good. It prevents practicing and learning incorrect methods. It's a wide range of K through 8 lessons. I think that's good, mainly because, you know, a lot of the folks who are working on math for the GED, that's where their wheelhouse is right now. That's what they need to be working on, okay? But one of the biggest things, you know, if you go to aano.com, and it's really just that simple, you have all of these different parts that they can go over. But here, it will translate those math lessons to over 100 languages, okay? The reason I bring this up, and the reason I think it's important, I understand that GED only offers the testing itself in English and Spanish. Completely get that. So what we're talking about here is, you know, they can use maybe a native language that isn't going to be available in the test. And what I would say is that's okay. The math piece of it is going to be largely the numbers, right? The arithmetic, okay? But in order to understand the concepts, you know, if they can go here, read it in their native language, and then read it in English, in other words, going back and forth between the two, understanding how it translates specifically, that's another learning tool for them. And it's another learning tool that goes beyond the math, beyond the arithmetic, right? It goes into the conceptual piece of it. It also helps with their reading, helps with their understanding of English, okay? So there's a lot of great stuff here. And I know I talk about this a lot when I'm in other sessions, but the reason I talk about it so much is because I'm enamored with teaching math. I enjoy it quite a bit. And this is one of the best tools that's out there for reaching out, particularly to ESL students, okay? Particularly to ESL students. I don't need to know Arabic for them in order for them to be able to go in and study geometric figures in Arabic. They can do it right there. But the key piece of it is having that, if you're having them do it in their native language, also having them take a look at the lesson then in English and compare the two so they can better understand it, right? Because they've got to be able to understand it in whatever language you're going to be taking it in, either English or Spanish. So there you go. Again, it's not really all that different than what you would see with GED testing. Okay. And as we're saying there, English, Spanish, or ... It's a fantastic tool. Again, to me, the great thing about it, it's free and you don't have to register for anything. Because I love Newsela. I think Newsela is great, but you have to sign up for it. I like Mentimeter a lot. You got to sign up for it, okay? This, boom, go to the website and go. And it's something that your students can do through any sort of a browser, right? So again, PC, they can do it on a laptop, they can do it on a phone, they can do it on a tablet. So as long as they've got an internet connection, they can do it on something. And it's something that they could pull up. If you have a student bookmark the AAA No site, it's something that they can easily pull up. And if they want to do 5 minutes of practice, they can do 5 minutes of practice. Side note, however you look at it, we're not in a courtroom. So anyway, as a side note here, what I would also say is, particularly when it comes to math, this is really good for making sure that they're practicing every day, okay? You know, as a musician, one of the things that I was taught early on and still wholeheartedly agree with and still taught is that you're better off practicing an instrument for 5 minutes a day than practicing it for 1 hour a week. Okay. So in other words, if I practice 5 minutes a day, even though I'm only getting 35 minutes worth of practice over the course of a week, if I just practice for say 1 hour on Wednesdays every day, I'm going to be better off with 5 minutes. And the reason for it is because you're getting that repetition. You're getting daily repetition and sticking with you. You may practice for a good hour, but you're going to spend time the next time you go back trying to remember what it is that you did, okay? Same thing applies with math. All right, I am off my soapbox and back into the presentation. Google Earth. I'm guessing a lot of people have used Google Earth, mainly to find their own house. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But Google Earth is also a fantastic educational tool. And I'm gonna back up here for a minute and say, you know, Google, for whatever trade-offs you may consider with it, however your feelings might be with it, Google's got a ton of fantastic educational tools, okay? Google Earth is one of them. And honestly, I wasn't aware of this until we started, you know, until we had this kind of session put together, okay? I wasn't aware of all the interactive learning, right? This is about animals of the world, ocean safaris, World War II. There's a ton of individual interactive learning stuff, right? So you can set it up as a class assignment. You can have people work on it on their own. Okay? There are a number of different ways that you can approach it, but the fact of the matter is Google Earth puts a ton of this stuff together for you to work on. There you go. Got nature, waterways from space, tracking the rainbird. And you name it, they've got something on it, right? Education. Okay. Before we go into Google Classroom, I am going to, surprise, surprise, make a tangent. Let's see, that is not what I'm looking for, but it's gonna have to do. Okay. Here we go. Yes, I know nobody really wants to know about the secret detox drink recipe. So what we are looking at here, if you have been to any of my sessions in the past several years, you would know that I talk about some of the stuff that they're doing in Florida. Apparently there's more going on down there than just Florida man or Florida woman. They have a wonderful adult ed program down there. We've talked about the IPDAY site before. I'm not going to go into that too much. I'm not going to go into that here, I should say. But one of the things that they do have, and if you're able to pull it up right now, I would suggest it. FloridaLiteracy.org has a ton of math videos on it. Okay, they've got a ton of maths resources for the GED. Okay. Quick question is, are there folks here who are using Khan Academy? Use it often, a ton, okay. You may have already seen some of this stuff then. If you have, it's kind of reiterating it. If you haven't, I would strongly suggest coming out here because as you can see, a lot of the videos were developed by Khan Academy, okay? But FloridaLiteracy.org/math videos, all one word. I don't know why I'm saying this to you. You can clearly see that in the bar there, but I have entire class. Yeah. Wow. You guys are serious about it out there. Okay. Well, that's great. So this is what you're looking at. They've got a bunch of mini lessons here. They've got tracking sheet. They've got teacher resources. But if you're wanting stuff to work with in terms of math, this is something they've just put out within the last couple months. I'll be honest, it's a fantastic resource. It is. I'm telling everybody that I can about it. And it's just because, you know, everything is so good. It's Khan Academy, and you know, my daughter, again, my 11-year-old daughter, I see a lot of Khan Academy stuff from K-12, and it's good stuff. Okay, I mean, there are a lot of good publishers out there. Please don't get me wrong, but you know, clearly it's good, and this is what you see here. I know this is more of a resource than anything else, but when we're talking about distance learning, and particularly when we're talking about math, these are some ways to give your students some assignments to work on that, again, are just kind of bite-sized, okay? A lot of our students either have issues with, you know, with attention deficits, or they just don't necessarily get a ton of time, right? I mean, if you're trying to work a full-time job, you've got kids to raise, regardless of whether you have a partner or not, and then you're trying to take GED classes on top of that, time is at a premium, okay? This is a really good way to help people maximize their time. Okay. And as they would say on Rocky and Bullwinkle, back to the show. So we have Google Classroom here. We talked about Edmodo a little earlier. And when we talked about Edmodo, you know, it's a great tool, okay? We've been talking about a lot of Google stuff here, right? Google Earth, a lot of different things that you can go into on that. Google Classroom is also something else that is functional. You can give assignments and quizzes. But the thing that I will say here, and again, it's a great resource. It's free. You know, if you are used to the Google way of doing things, then I would say it's going to feel intuitive. That being said, it doesn't really offer that much more than Edmodo does. I tend to side with Lynn, if we're going to be perfectly honest. I prefer Edmodo over Google Classroom, but it's mainly because I like the simplicity and the no frills feel of it. It's one of those things, if you feel very comfortable with Google and Google Classroom, it's a great tool too. I'm not knocking it, and if that's what you're used to, by all means, please play around with it. And I would say, honestly, if you aren't familiar with either one, play with both. See which one you like better. You know, there's not, as we talk about on the extended response, right? There's no right answer, okay? It's really what's going to be most comfortable for you. And in turn, if it's more comfortable for you, it's probably going to be more comfortable for your students. And obviously we need to flex on that, but in general, right? So we keep bouncing around, right? We talk about different things that you can use for distance learning. We've been talking about using assignments. We've been talking about putting people together in a class. We've been talking about the skill and drill piece of it. We've been talking about places where you can get more conceptual. Now we're going to go back to this, which is Quizlet, a mobile and web-based study application that allows students to study information via learning tools and games. Quizlet is very popular. I don't even bother asking whether people have worked with this before because I know people have in some way, shape, or form. It's just that ubiquitous. Quizlet is good. This is another one, and to me, it kind of goes back to Mentimeter. It's really, I think it's best when you've got an actual virtual classroom, where you've got everybody there at the same time. One of the things, though, that I will say, as you can see here, it's fee-based. Now, it's not that much, okay? But it's still there. I mean, you know, $3 a month is $3 a month, and you know, it's one of those things that if you decide that, you know, that isn't for you, then so be it. Your students wouldn't have to pay for it, by the way. When you take a look at this, you know, it says Quizlet Teacher, it's $3 a month. But I will also say, you know, you get some value for that, right? Tracking student progress, removing ads, you know, for your students, the offline access, and it's a really good app. But the thing that I really want to stress here is that, to me anyway, if you're talking about Quizlet, it's going to be best in a virtual classroom situation, okay? Where you can do quick polls, you can do questions and stuff like that. If you're working with people one-on-one, if you are, you know, not pulling people into a classroom at the same time, it's probably not as useful, just to be blunt. And that's okay. Again, you know, we have a lot of tools that we put in our toolbox, and even though you may not have a virtual classroom where everybody is together now, come October, things might change. Come January, things might change, okay? And as such, I'm just asking you to keep this, even if this is something you're looking at and you're going, right now, not for me. It's perfectly okay, but keep it in your mind. okay? Have that in the back of the toolbox that you can reach into and say, oh yeah, I remember Tom's talking about that, crazy Iowa guy. So again, we have Quizlet there. Poll everywhere. It's flexible at every step, which is true, okay? You have questions for live interaction. You can invite the audience to respond. But again, the big thing with this is the virtual classroom. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, just like I didn't spend a lot of time on Quizlet, mainly because from what I saw in the group chat, and if I'm wrong on this, please speak up quickly. I don't see a lot of people doing this, okay? You know, everybody here is talking about either hybrid models or, you know, doing one-on-ones with folks. I'm not hearing a lot about, you know, virtual classrooms put together. Poll everywhere is great for that. But again, it doesn't, I don't know that this is something that's necessarily going to be out there for you. And if I'm making assumptions, I apologize. And please feel free to go take a look at it, right? And these are some of the things you can do, right? So we're not actually going to go through this. Again, there are things that you can do like that. But largely, that's meant for folks who are in a classroom. That's what I have here. These are some of the, what I would call the top tools that are used, the ones that are most ubiquitous. Now, I will also say, I've talked with different states, and there are different tools that are used out there. I'm curious, how many folks here are using Edmentum? If anyone. I'm not saying anybody is using it, but is there anyone out there who's using Edmentum? I see a lot of Khan Academy. I will take that as a no. So one of the things to kind of keep in mind then, depending on how closely you work with some of your school districts, the reason I bring this up, Delaware is a really good example of this, where a lot of their adult education programs are tied into K-12 districts. As such, the tools that they use, I mean, fortunately for them, they don't have to purchase tools, but they do have to use, well, I don't say they have to, but most of them choose to use the resources that have been purchased by the school districts. What I'm getting at here is that I understand that money is scarce for adult education, particularly in South Dakota. One of the things to think about, if you haven't already or if you haven't reached out to them, is potentially reaching out to your local school district and seeing if, you know, if they would be willing to float a couple of licenses your way for things. Give you a good example. So here, once again, you know, like a lot of folks here, if you have kids, you were doing homeschooling, right? And that can be a challenge, particularly trying to teach your own kids stuff. One of the things that was really helpful is that the Iowa City School District has a paid subscription to Newsela. Okay, and one of the great things about and Newsela is not one that I put up here, mainly because we've talked about it a lot. I think most adult educators are aware of it, but I'm bringing it up here for a purpose. Like I said, Iowa City School District has a ton of licenses for it, right? For all, you know, for their students. If I were an adult ed program here, which I'm not, but if I were, I would be reaching out to the Iowa City School District and saying, hey, you know, I've got an adult education program here. I'm willing to bet that you aren't using all of your licenses all at one time. You know, is there something that we can work out? Okay. Every place is going to be different. But if you're looking for additional tools, I would just suggest, especially if, you know, if you've got students in a local K-12 system, or if you're familiar with the local K-12 system, seeing if there's some stuff that you can piggyback. Okay. Given the times that we're in, given the goals that we all have and the challenges that we all have, my hope is that local school districts would at least hear you out. I'm not promising that you'll get something, but if you say, hey, you know, this is what we're looking at, and, you know, and I know funding's challenging for everybody, but you know, hopefully you might be able to get a few licenses out of them to get some potentially different materials. And again, either stuff with Khan Academy, Edmentum, I'm blanking on the third thing that I was going to say, but my point here is, or New Zealand, sorry, that was what I was getting at. A lot of these school districts have purchased a ton of licenses for their students that, you know, they can't necessarily use all of them, or they can't use all of them at once. They have more capacity available. So it's not going to hurt to ask. They may not say yes, but you know, the worst they can do is say no. And at that point, you know, what, you've taken 5 minutes of your time. I think it's worth it. So that's what I have here. First question that I want to put out to the group: are there any distance learning tools, because I'm sure there are there any distance learning tools that we haven't talked about here today that folks on the call are using out in the field? Because I promise you, what we've talked about today, it's not the definitive list. I know there's more stuff out there, but I want to make sure we're hitting some of the biggest and easiest to use ones. And obviously there's going to be stuff that you all are using that works well for you. ReadWorks. Ah, yes. That's a good program. Not specifically for distance, but works well with it. Excellent. What else do we have? Come on, I know Royce isn't the only one still awake. I haven't put you all to sleep yet, I hope. I know it's almost 4 o'clock. I know it's been a long day for everyone, and I appreciate everyone sticking with me. Oh, Burlington English. Aztec, and thank you. You know, obviously we partner with Aztec. I try to be careful on these calls because Aztec is a wonderful company. I don't want it to come across as if, you know, I'm trying to push something. Aztec has great products. Burlington English, especially when you're talking about ESL folks, fantastic product, okay? Learning Express library, fast, okay? Everything that you're seeing here are all great and viable choices, all of them, okay? I've given you some things that will maybe help you with some classroom organization. You know, we've talked about some things that will help with either classroom organization or, you know, giving people some more skill and drill stuff, or being able to organize an assignment. But I'm not going to lie, I mean, those aren't the only things out there, okay? And not only that, but the things that we talked about can easily be used in conjunction with everything that we have here, okay? So the things that you've been talking about in terms of Burlington English, National Geographic, GED Academy, again, another good group, Aztec, Learning Express Library, all of that can also be used in conjunction with the organizational tools we talked about today. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really using the combination of tools that you feel comfortable with. Yes, thank you, Ken. Pick a few. So pick a small combination and work from there. I couldn't have said it better myself. With that being said, are there any other questions or concerns? Is there anything that I can address for folks here while we're talking about either distance learning or just GED stuff in general? I've solved all of the world's problems. That's amazing. That's good. I can just, I can call it a day then. Here's the thing. Again, like I said, I know it's been a long day. I know it's been a long session. I appreciate you sticking this out with me. So thank you for showing up. I hope you at least got 1 or 2 tools that you can at least try out and see what's going on with them. But, you know, mainly this is about making sure that you've got some more organizational tools to put in that toolbox, some more things to think about. Again, I will say AAA no, AAA no is a fantastic teaching tool for ESL students when it comes to math. So you know, if there are things that you think of, and I'll type this in here real quick, assuming I can spell my own name correctly.
Are you going to share your presentations with us?
I am.
Just send them to me. I'll make sure they get up on the website.
Yes, ma'am. I will do that here shortly.
And then I have a giveaway that I was hoping you would give me a number between 1 and, let's see, 55.
The number 33 comes to mind.
Threes are popular today. Jennifer
I know, right?
Keys. Jennifer Keys
Oh,
won a gift certificate from South Dakota All. She needs to watch her email for that e-certificate.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
Kim,
Thomas.
that wraps up everything that I'm sorry, yes?
I wanted to thank you again for your time. And
Yes.
since we have a couple minutes, I have a question. It's not really related to the theme of this afternoon's session, but I had
Okay.
recently submitted an inquiry to the Division of Adult Education and Literacy at OCTE.
Okay.
And I asked about the possibility or viability of GED, in this case, high school equivalency GED ready subtest completion, successful completion of a subtest as a measurable skill gain. And I received a response that this was discussed during the WIOA information collection request, and essentially they didn't find that there was rigor enough in successfully earning completing a subtest to warrant measurable skills gain. Do you know if GEDTS has any intention of ever trying to submit that for the national reporting system reconsideration, perhaps?
I smile because this is actually something that I was discussing with another state in the fall. And by the way, I'm glad that you pushed this, John. I am, because it's something that the other state that I was working with was pretty frustrated about this too. Short answer is I believe so, but you also know how things work with federal agencies, right? So just because we're starting to work on the process, I mean, it's so far in its infancy that I can't, there's not really much I can address with it right now. Does that make sense?
It does, understood. And I'm glad that you were willing to address it, and also validated that other states have this concern. I hear these whispers amongst our US DOL partners in Title I workforce training, et cetera. And having a little bit of insight of how those things are federally approved. I know it's a lot of psychometric data and review and clarifying questions. But anyway, thanks again, Thomas. I hope you and yours enjoy a safe, rewarding summer.
Thank you, and likewise. With that, Kim, do you have any last words of wisdom or anything else to share with the group?
I'd just like to thank you for your time and expertise that you spend with South Dakota.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate
I love doing this. You guys, I've said this before, but I will say it again. You guys are awesome, and it's just because this is the biggest, most engaged group I ever see every year. It's amazing, and I'm not saying that other states don't have good groups, but I never get 60 people in a room who are this engaged in it. And it's like when you're on a sports team and you're playing in front of the home crowd. And this is the one time when I feel like I'm in front of the home crowd. Okay, so folks, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your kind comments. So that being said, have a great afternoon, have a great evening, and I will be talking to you all later.
All right. Don't forget we have the South Dakota annual meeting at 4:15 today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.